We have breaking news. The CDC has confirmed the first U.S. case of the coronavirus that's killed 6 people and sickened hundreds in Asia. NBC Charlotte's Bill McGinty is in the newsroom with more on this serious virus. Bill.
Yeah, hey, Fred and Sarah. The CDC announcing today that a male passenger from China, that's where the flight originated, has been diagnosed with the coronavirus. So here's what we know about this so far. The sick male was diagnosed out in Washington state. Officials say he's in his 30s, in good condition, currently being isolated at one of the medical centers there in Washington state, more likely Western Washington. The coronavirus is part of a large family of viruses that usually infects animals, but sometimes this can spread to humans. Symptoms include shortness of breath, runny nose, cough, and sore throat. So it can definitely parallel the flu. The outbreak believed to have originated from meat and seafood, a market out there in China, in a place called Wuhan, China. The number of people known to have been infected with the coronavirus has jumped to nearly 300 people, with new cases being reported in China's capital and some of the other Asian countries. Now, as a precaution, the CDC has started screening all travelers arriving from China in New York, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Chicago, and Atlanta.
Taking these steps because the situation is evolving so rapidly and because we know that coronaviruses can be serious.
All right, so the fear is that this thing could spread further because I alluded to earlier, the symptoms of this virus really mimic that of the flu or even the common cold in this country. So they're fairly concerned about that. We're going to keep monitoring. We're looking at updates from the CDC. We'll let you know as soon as we know more.
All right, Bill, thank you.
Breaking overnight, more than 200 Americans landing in Alaska after being evacuated from Wuhan, China, the epicenter of the coronavirus outbreak. Each person is going to undergo screening for the virus before heading to California. Right now, as of this morning, the virus has killed more than 100 people and infected over 6,000 others. That's around the world.
Thank you for joining us for the news at 4. We begin with breaking news. Governor Roy Cooper just announcing the first case of coronavirus in North Carolina. His task force holding a press conference just moments ago.
The governor is saying that a patient from Wake County, which is the Raleigh area, tested positive for the virus. WCNC Charlotte's Sarah French over in the newsroom right now. So, Kara, this has not been confirmed by the CDC, correct?
Correct. So Governor Cooper just releasing this in the past hour. He is saying this is just a presumed case, Bill, until they have confirmation from the CDC, which they are waiting on right now. Governor Cooper also saying that the patient had recently traveled to Washington state and was exposed at a long-term care facility where there is currently a case of coronavirus. That person currently in isolation at home. Cooper giving an update on their condition.
The person is doing well and is in isolation at home. We've been preparing for this, and we do expect to see more cases in North Carolina. We are working closely with local health departments, healthcare providers, and others to quickly identify and respond to new cases.
Again, Governor Cooper saying this is an isolated case. However, they are working diligently to confirm if anyone else here has the virus. So that's the very latest. We'll be following this story throughout the newscast and have much more for you tonight at 5. Guys, back to you.
All right, Sarah, thank you.
But first at 6, we continue to follow the latest breaking developments when it comes to the coronavirus. There are 2 confirmed cases in both North and South Carolina. There are also 5 presumptive cases in the Palmetto State. One of those, a man who flew through Charlotte Douglas on his way home from Italy.
It is likely that we will have more presumptive positive cases.
We need individuals in our community to try to stay calm.
And we just learned that one person is being monitored for the virus at Clemson University.
All of this coming as cases across the U.S. and around the world surpass 100,000, nearly 24 deaths here in the U.S. The virus affecting schools, travel, and the economy. The Dow dropped more than 2,000 points today. It was the worst fall since 2008.
We are kicking off the 4 o'clock today with breaking news. North Carolina now under a state of emergency due to the spread of the coronavirus. North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper officially today declared a state of emergency. That happened very early this afternoon.
Yeah, this comes as 5 people tested positive for the virus yesterday. Those 5 presumptive positive tests bringing the statewide total to 7 cases.
Yeah, Governor Cooper said all 5 cases were related to a conference that was in Boston back in February, and officials anticipate more positive results linked to that specific conference.
So let's dive in deeper here, live in the newsroom with the details. WCNC Charlotte's Fred Shropshire. Fred, what will this mean for the people of North Carolina?
Well, the governor did declare that state of emergency at a news conference earlier today, as you say, this coming as the number of cases in our state rise to 7. Roy Cooper says 5 of the cases stem from a conference in Boston that happened back in February. He expects more positive results linked to that same conference.
The new cases and the advice of these experts have led us to give new guidance to North Carolina residents and to declare a state of emergency for our state.
Breaking news right now at 4, officially a pandemic. World Health Organization updating the status of coronavirus today. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us here on WCNC Charlotte. I'm Vanessa Rufus.
And I'm Bill McGinty. Now we want to give you a visual of just how this outbreak is progressing. You can see the map of the entire world, mostly the entire world anyway, highlighted in blue, those countries dealing with a mass outbreak of the virus. The declaration doesn't change what countries should do to aggressively contain the virus, though.
Breaking right now, the first positive coronavirus test in the Charlotte area. State health officials say the patient is a woman from Lancaster County. We're told she's isolated at a hospital.
Meantime, all UNC schools are moving to online classes, ending most in-person classes by the end of next week. That includes UNC Charlotte.
And President Donald Trump just announced he will deliver a primetime address to the nation tonight on the federal response to the virus.
We're coming on air with major breaking news. President Trump addressing the coronavirus crisis, suspending travel from Europe to the United States. We have complete coverage when the ban goes into place and how long travelers will be impacted.
But first, we are following more big breaking news. Just in the last few hours, the NBA announced it will suspend the season indefinitely because of the coronavirus. Sports director Nick Carboni joins us in studio. Nick, you heard just before our 6 o'clock newscast the Hornets would still play their home game Friday in front of fans.
Yeah, Fred, and things have changed, and that's how quickly this story is moving, especially through the world of American sports tonight. What changed was an NBA player tested positive for the coronavirus. Just before tip in Oklahoma City between the Thunder and the Jazz, the game was called off, and Jazz center Rudy Gobert was taken to the hospital with an illness. Just hours later, it was reported Gobert tested positive for COVID-19. And just moments after that report, the NBA came out and said the season would be suspended. In addition, the ACC tournament in Greensboro holding its games without fans beginning tomorrow, although North Carolina is playing right now. NCAA doing the same thing for its tournament. But the way things are moving with this story, we'll see if there are any games at all.
The Mecklenburg County Public Health Director is now confirming 2 presumptive positive coronavirus cases right here in Mecklenburg County. Now, it's thought one of those people traveled outside the country, the other traveled outside the state. Right now, those people are self-isolating, we are told.
But I think it's critical for us to realize that we are all in this together, that we will find a way forward for our state, that the number one objective here is to protect the health, safety, and welfare of North Carolinians.
Just into the newsroom, the ACC men's basketball tournament has been canceled. This comes after the commissioner said it will be played without fans in attendance. The NCAA tournament announcing this week that the games will not have fans there either. The ACC has been in constant conversations with state and federal health authorities about this.
So many developments. It seems like we get new details by the minute. But as you mentioned, Governor Roy Cooper speaking this afternoon, in fact, probably about a half hour or so ago, that press conference wrapped up. And as you mentioned, some new recommendations that they are coming out with, including this, the advisory that event planners with gatherings where they're expecting more than 100 people to show up, that they either postpone or cancel or somehow amend those events. And so we are talking about things like conferences, worship services, sporting events, concerts, the like. We've already seen several cancellations today. The governor also recommends employers allow workers to work at home if possible. These recommendations are based on guidance coming from the CDC, current actions taken by other states, and the most up-to-date epidemiologic information.
The circumstances are constantly changing. North Carolina has more tough decisions ahead, and we will be ready to make them.
We come on the air tonight with breaking news. First at 5, a national emergency in the United States. We watched it here live on WCNC Charlotte. President Donald Trump declaring the coronavirus a national emergency. All of this happening within the last hour and a half.
Urging every state to set up emergency operation centers effective immediately. I'm also asking every hospital in this country to activate its emergency preparedness plan so that they can meet the needs of Americans everywhere.
And at least 2 area school districts are canceling classes to help slow the spread of the virus.
Lancaster County Schools announced they're canceling classes for the next 2 weeks, and Iredell-Statesville Schools announced they're extending their spring break through at least the end of next week. Novant Health setting up triage tents in front of 3 of its largest hospitals for the potential influx of patients related to the coronavirus. If patients arrive at the hospital with respiratory symptoms, they'll be taken inside the triage tents. And as the virus spreads, the cancellations and delays are stacking up. Today, Carowinds announced it's pushing back its opening day. The theme park supposed to open on March 21st. That's now been delayed until April 3rd. A statement on social media points out there have been no confirmed cases on the property.
Breaking at 6 on WCNC Charlotte, Governor Roy Cooper ordering all public schools in North Carolina to close for at least 2 weeks starting Monday and issuing an executive order to prohibit gatherings of more than 100 people. It comes as the coronavirus cases in the state are on the rise. At last check, the CDC is reporting 23 cases in North Carolina, 2 here in Mecklenburg County. In South Carolina, an additional 6 cases announced today, bringing the total to 19. Nationwide, there are more than 2,000 cases and 51 deaths. Tonight at 11 on WCNC Charlotte.
Effective immediately, I've ordered the closing of all schools in the state of South Carolina.
School is out across the Carolinas as the coronavirus spreads. South Carolina Governor Henry McMaster's order comes 24 hours after North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper made the same announcement. The closures start Monday and last through the end of the month.
As you can see, we've been talking about the social distancing. We are taking those guidelines very seriously, practicing what we preach by standing a little further apart. A lot of important information to get to this afternoon to make sure you and your family are staying safe, following the CDC guidelines as well. So let's get to that information, the stats so far. Number of cases, according to the CDC here in the United States, continuing to spike. Right now, there are over 3,700 across the country, 28 of those in South Carolina. 33 in North Carolina. That includes 4 in Mecklenburg County. The latest case is a student at Campbell University. So far, at least 69 people in the U.S. have died.
All right, welcome back. We are starting things off here with some breaking news. Of course, the latest on coronavirus. As we mentioned just a few minutes ago, we received the strictest guidance yet. President Trump asking Americans to limit gatherings under 10 people and to avoid non-essential travel. That announcement just made just a few minutes ago. And we are seeing, of course, a bigger increase there with the cases that we're seeing across the U.S., roughly 4,000 cases. And some of the new ones we're seeing, too, in the Carolinas, including the first coronavirus-related death reported out of South Carolina.
Now at 6, we are staying on top of all the breaking developments related to the coronavirus. The big news tonight, restaurants and bars in both North and South Carolina closing their dining rooms. Those businesses will only be allowed to serve customers in the drive-thru or takeout. The governors of both states expanding unemployment benefits for workers who are affected by the outbreak, and South Carolina's governor is getting the National Guard involved.
I'm requiring the National Guard to begin coordinating and planning with the hospitals for mobile facilities, to build infrastructure, to acquire resources. This is a plan. We're not doing this, but we're making plans.
Here's the official count right now. In North Carolina, there are 45 confirmed cases. That includes 11 new cases in Mecklenburg County and the first presumed case in Lincoln County in South Carolina. The total now up to 47 cases, including the first one in York County. We're staying on top of breaking news surrounding the coronavirus pandemic. The big headlines nationally: the border between the U.S. and Canada is closed to all non-essential traffic. Detroit's big three automakers are shutting down to protect workers. And 2 floating Navy hospital ships are being prepared to deploy, one to New York and one along the West Coast.
Locally, Union County has its first case, so does Gaston County. Also today, Mecklenburg County reported 3 new cases, bringing the total to 14, and a new case just reported in Iredell County, making the second one there.
Here's a look at the statewide numbers. North Carolina reported more than 24 new cases today, bringing the total across the state to at least 70. Of course, these numbers are constantly changing. South Carolina reporting 13 new cases for a total of 60.
New tonight, some major relief from the government. The second coronavirus response bill is now law. President Donald Trump just signed it this evening. Things like sick leave, testing, food assistance now receiving federal funds to keep them accessible in this time of crisis. Vanessa Rufus joining us live to explain what this bill does for Americans. Vanessa.
Hey, good evening, Fred. So this is the Family's First Coronavirus Response Act. This is phase 2 of the government's response. Phase 1 directed funding towards vaccine research and production. Phase 3 is yet to come, and that's likely going to contain more fiscal stimulus policies.
If you're watching us every day, then you know that normally I have a co-anchor with me, and our Vanessa Rufus isn't here in the studio with me. That is because we are practicing what we preach, called social distancing. Vanessa is at home and is going to be joining me throughout the show at different periods. But first, Vanessa, I guess the logical question is, how does it feel to be doing this from home?
Yeah, it's definitely a bit of a pivot, right? We all, as Americans, just across the board, have been thrown into these various scenarios now where we have to kind of try to figure out how to do our daily lives, go to work, and do it all by social distancing. So, you know, the media here, the news industry, not exempt from that. So we're just trying to figure it all out. And we are testing out these new technologies to see how we can do things from home as well. So I will be here. I'll be with you guys. And yeah, I'll keep you posted on how the day goes on, Bill.